In the Unresolved Problems segment, surveillance, terror, and election 2016. We now know that the ringleader of the Paris bloodbath was plotting terror attacks in Europe for 11 months before he was killed in a dramatic police raid on a Paris suburb on Wednesday. How did such a well-known jihadist go undetected in the heart of Europe? Some officials blame the massive leak of American surveillance secrets by Edward Snowden, saying it gave the terrorists important intel and prompted governments to scale back spying efforts.
They found these encrypted apps, and they believe they knew to use encrypted communications because of the Edward Snowden revelations. What was it you said earlier about Snowden?
I said that I thought he ought to be brought back to the United States and tried before a jury of his peers if convicted of treason, which is, I think, the appropriate charge. I would give him the death sentence, and I would prefer to see him hanged by the neck until he was dead rather than merely electrocuted. I think the blood of a lot of these French young people is on his hands.
But presidential candidate Rand Paul says the Paris attacks absolutely do not justify more spying.
So when they stand up on television and says the tragedy in Paris means you have to give up your liberty, we need more phone surveillance. Bull.
Joining us now with reaction in Washington, D.C., Peter Suderman, senior editor of Reason magazine, and in Boynton Beach, Florida, Michael Solomon, a former NYPD special investigator. So, Michael, you police the biggest city in America. In your opinion, do we need more or less surveillance to stop terror attacks?
We need absolutely more. You know, I listened to Rand Paul, and I'm scratching my head, and I'm saying, the man's an ophthalmologist. He should have his eyes examined because he has trouble seeing the nose on his face. I mean, he was talking to a group of students today who do nothing all day but violate everybody else's civil rights by posting garbage on social media, all their friends and everything else. Confidential information is confidential. In order to build a case, he has never investigated a case in his life. In order to build a case, you've got to start with reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is Omar calling his cousin in the Middle East 22 times a day. That's how that works. And from there, if you find out what it is, then you pass it along to the NSA, and they build a case for probable cause, and they go after a warrant.
Let me just ask you, let me push back a little bit. If Omar calls his cousin 22 times, I'm sure he's on the NSA's watch list, and he's already being surveilled. Here's the question, though. Paris, in France, they don't have the privacy laws, the protections and laws that we do here constitutionally in America, yet there still was a bloodbath perpetrated on the Parisians. More information didn't seem to help the Parisians.
No, it didn't, but it's got to be collective. You can't have 6 or 7 different organizations building surveillance and not putting it together. We've got to start talking to each other. It happened prior to 9/11, you know, and it's got to come together. We've got to do it together.
All right, Peter, let me ask you this. You know, the needle in the haystack analogy, you need the whole haystack to find the needle. Does that work here?
I don't think it does. And, you know, I would point out that not only does Paris not have, that France does not have the protections that we have, the privacy protections, they actually expanded their surveillance capabilities over the summer prior to these attacks, and it didn't help. And, you know, before, if you talk about Snowden, and it's worth remembering that there were international terror attacks before Snowden's revelations. There were attacks in London, in Madrid, unfortunately, terrible tragedies. And it wasn't as if there were no international terrorist attacks before Snowden's revelations. I think that what Snowden has done has enabled a debate and brought transparency to a process that is really worryingly secret, and that the Obama administration in particular tried to keep secret, tried to keep out of the eyes of the public because they didn't want people to know what was going on.
So here's the debate right here. We're setting it up with you two gentlemen. On one side, there are people who want all the information they want it collected and saved by the government. On the other side, the libertarians say, no, if you want the information, you're going to have to go through legal channels to get it. Is there a happy medium, guys? Let me start with you, Michael. Is there a happy medium where you can get the information, but the servers, the Verizons, the Googles, they have to hold it, and you still have to petition the courts? Is there a problem with that? Won't that make it accessible enough?
No, it will make it accessible enough, but the problem is you can't just keep it. I mean, if something looks funny, you've got to talk about it, and you've got to pass the information along. I mean, look at all the confidential information that Rand Paul has in his office about his patients, medical information that's confidential. Nobody wants that leaked out. And it's the same thing here. I mean, we've got information that we're holding as confidential. The NSA has to be trusted that they've got it and they're only going to use it when they need it.
What about, Peter? Is this a fair compromise where you tell Verizon, AT&T, Google to hold the information, and if the NSA or the government wants it, Intel Department wants it, they can petition the FISA court to get it? That seems like a fair compromise, no?
I really think that it's dangerous to allow the NSA to have special dominion over this information, because the NSA is part of the government, and these sorts of sweeping, indiscriminate programs, these don't just collect information from people who are likely to be terrorists, who are suspected terrorists. They're picking up information from millions of Americans. We know this. In fact, we know this in part because of the revelations provided by Edward Snowden. And so millions of Americans' information are being vacuumed up.
You didn't hear what I said. I gave you that. I said the NSA is not allowed to just collect all data mine every single American. I'm saying they require the various carriers to hold the data, and if the NSA wants it, they can petition the FISA court. Is that a problem?
You still give the NSA special access.
Good.
Ultimately, it is the same.
Access, but
it is the NSA getting special access to the information that millions of Americans to private personal information, records
Peter,
of who you're calling, how often, for how long, where you are, and this could be you, it could be me, it could be any millions of people.
I'm as libertarian as they come, but I still think it's okay that not give them complete carte blanche over every single piece of data in America, but certainly give them the first crack at it before anyone else does. I'm going to have to leave it there, guys. Peter, Michael, we ran out of time.
I got to tell you,
it's a hot debate.
No problem.